Well, hello, everyone. Merry Christmas Eve to all of you in SADS Foundation family land. It's great to get to be with you, or Merry Christmas to Dr. Samsarian and family and friends down under in Australia. So wherever you are across the globe, I'm so glad I get to spend 40 minutes with you for our 80th, can you believe it? 80th SADS Foundation live program. So if you're connecting by Facebook or YouTube or whatever platform, I'm so glad you chose to join us now or on tape. I'm Mike Ackerman, genetic cardiologist at the Mayo Clinic and director of Mayo Clinic's Winland Smith Rice Genetic Heart Rhythm Clinic and its complementary sudden death genomics laboratory. I'm here on behalf of our CEO of the Sudden Arrhythmia Death Syndrome Foundation, the SADS Foundation, Alice Laura, and she greets you. She wishes you Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. And we have a very special program born out of tragedy for both and all involved, but culminating in really a beautiful story, a wonderful partnership, a life well lived back then and continues to be well done presently as they make a difference and partner with us to save lives and to help those who are alive live and thrive despite your diagnosis of whatever genetic heart disease you may have, whether it's long QT syndrome, Brugada syndrome, CPVT, arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy, whatever it is, we will live and thrive. Many of you have done so in 2021. I hope you all will commit to do so in the new year. So happy new year. We are in the pandemic, this thing called COVID. And just as of yesterday, one of our own in the Ackerman family, my bride of 33 years, got coroned. So she came back positive yesterday, a couple of days of sniffles. And we knew her mom and dad, age 79 and 84, were coming in last night. And we thought, well, maybe just to be safe, because they hadn't had the booster, we better get tested. And sure enough, 6:30 p.m., literally as mom and dad are walking through the door, her test came back positive from that morning. So we shuttled them to the hotel, put my wife in quarantine upstairs with the dog, and now trusting that, and took our son who flew in from Baylor. He didn't even come stop at home. He went straight to the hotel and hoping that all of us stay asymptomatic, because the Ackerman Big Sky Christmas trip, we fly out tomorrow. At least right now, all of us fly out minus one, my wife, who now stays home with our dog. So it gets real, doesn't it? And it's been real for throughout the world, as we now are approaching 280 million cases worldwide, 5.4 million deaths attributed to SARS-CoV-2. In the United States, 52 million cases, 815,647 loved ones who have died. We've made progress, unbelievable progress, as we close out 2021, haven't we? There have been 8.9 billion doses of COVID-19 vaccine administered throughout the globe. So still do all the right things. Mask when it makes sense to mask. And notice we have the mask from SADS Foundation. So put on yours. Do the hand washing when you need to, when it makes sense, and do it often. Indoors, be masked. Outdoors, walking your dog. You really don't need to. But perhaps the most important thing, and the most important thing for many people still out there, is if you are age eligible, get the vaccine. It's not a cure, but the vaccine works. When you are time eligible, get boosted. I've been boosted. I'm good to go. It won't necessarily prevent the Omicron variant from infecting me, but it certainly will make it mild at best in me. Like, it is relatively mild in my wife. She has a cold, but because it may not have been mild in her mom and dad at age 84, get boosted if and when you are time eligible. And let's get this behind us as soon as we can. Well, on to today's show as we close out an incredible year of being together. 80 episodes. I cannot believe it. And we couldn't think of a better way to close out the year than to celebrate the lives of two beautiful people now gone, but what their families have chosen to do with their grief in the aftermath of their family tragedy, what they did and have done over the past 25 years for Dr. London, and over the past now 16 years for Tony Valine and Jim Guthrie. And so I'm going to ask Aaron to bring on a very dear friend of mine who has joined and has been on the board of the SADS Foundation to hear his story. And so I'm inviting Dr. Alan London to come and join us. And for those of you who have joined us online, I see you and I wish you Merry Christmas. Kelsey, I'm glad, great for getting your booster, and those and the rest of you, wherever you are joining us today, Merry Christmas. And Dr. London, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Mike.
And it's good to see you. We used to see each other more often as when you were on the board, and I sure appreciate you and your counsel and your wisdom over the years as you help guide us. But maybe let's start before your time on the board of the SADS Foundation, because you just didn't join the board because of your expertise as a physician. It starts more tragic than that with your son, my name, Michael, who died now 24 years ago. And take us back to what happened then and the days and the months and years that followed as to what you and your family did out of Michael's tragedy.
Yeah, can't believe it's 24 years, but we lived in Southern California at the time, and Michael was the middle of three children. He was 11 years old, and the year before this all unfolded, he had fainted a couple of times, and they were both explained away at the emergency room the first time by his pediatrician and pediatric cardiologist, pediatric neurologist in Los Angeles as vasovagal events. He was vomiting the first time. He was on a trampoline and got the wind knocked out of him the second time. He passed out, but he didn't just faint. He really was out. His eyes rolled back. He had a minor seizure, and it was very alarming. Luckily, we were there both times, his mom and I. And so we racked it up to that. He wasn't medicated. He had EKGs, EEGs, a full workup. This is 1997. Good doctors in Los Angeles, UCLA affiliated. And we went on a family vacation to the Holy Land, to Israel, with our synagogue. And we were in the desert after a full day of visiting Mount Masada, and very hot, and all of us exhausted. We stayed on a kibbutz in the middle of the desert, and all the kids went swimming that night, and the parents were sitting around the pool. Michael and his sister were holding their breath underwater to see who could swim further, and he came up face up, unresponsive. I didn't notice him. His mom did, said, "Michael, stop fooling around." When she saw he wasn't fooling around, she jumped in, pulled him out. I'm a family physician by training. We did CPR on the side of the pool for about 40 minutes. We were in the middle of nowhere. They did not have a defibrillator. There was no ambulance nearby. They called the Israeli military, who sent a medical crew who got there, tried to defibrillate, but it was 40 minutes later, and Michael passed away like in our arms. Very
incredible. That's incredible, Dr. London. I'm trying to think as you're telling what happened being 24 years ago, as fast forward 24 years later, we still hear some of these tragedies with delayed appreciation of the warning signs and incorrect interpretation of the ECG, the automatic external defibrillator sitting, 10 yards away, but nobody grabbing it. And so we still have a lot of work to do, but we also have heard of incredible catches too, where there was that emergency physician who said, I don't like the sound of that faint. Let's get an ECG, which, as you know, oftentimes isn't done. So we've made a lot of progress, but we still have a long ways to go yet. But before we talk about what we're doing to get better, you know, what happened next? Obviously, I can imagine for you and your wife and your other two children, you don't immediately join SADS and stuff. What took place next during the intervening time span, and how long was it then, would you say, before you connected to SADS or SADS Foundation connected to you?
So the cause of death was listed as drowning
Hmm.
by the Israeli authorities. Michael was a healthy, athletic young man at 11, played soccer and basketball and everything you can imagine, could run for hours sometimes. So it didn't make sense. I'm sorry, I made a mistake earlier. We lived in California when he fainted. When we went to Israel, I was back in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic, which
Hmm.
many of the viewers will know, just like Mayo Clinic, one of the top facilities in the world, and in terms of heart disease, right there at the top. And so I took, didn't sit well with me. I went to my old files from the Los Angeles workup, and I could barely hold them, honestly, myself. I couldn't look at the EKG.
Hmm.
But I brought it to the head of electrophysiology, who had been one of Michael's coaches, and he got tears in his eyes and said, Alan, they missed this, even without calculating the corrected QT interval. This is a very abnormal EKG. He did see a pediatric cardiologist
Hmm.
in Los Angeles who missed the 12 lead EKG findings. And he said, we're doing research now. Let's send blood samples. Well, let's get the whole family tested. Let's do treadmills on everyone, send EKG or get EKGs, get DNA. And if you can get Michael's DNA, Dr. Tobin down in Texas, you remember,
Yeah.
was doing early research. And again, it's just amazing. They took, luckily, we had a sample of Michael's tissue sent from Israel, and they noticed a defect. And then they had to, look thousands and tens and millions of times at all five of us to find that his mother had the defect and my daughter Eliana had the defect, and it was long QT1, and that was the cause of his death. Our lives changed. Eliana went on maximum dose beta blocker, stopped all activities. We were introduced to Dr. Vincent, and you'll remember the doctor in Rochester that was an early pioneer,
Dr. Arthur Moss.
Dr. Moss. We went and visited him, and that's how I got to know SADS and got involved with helping other families and getting on the phone with people, new diagnoses, going to the annual meetings, being on the board. And I still am very involved and refer people to SADS all the time.
One of the things I wonder, Alan, and I just want to thank you publicly for not only what you've done on the board and the counsel you've given over the years, but you also have been a very gracious and generous donor to the cause of the SADS Foundation. And we often have at year end give of some of your treasure to SADS. For those of you out there who would still like to do that, you can donate at www.sads.org, and in the top right corner there's donate now. And whatever you give, I can only promise you that we will be outstanding stewards of your gift for the sole purpose of saving lives and helping families who know they have a genetic heart condition live and thrive despite that heart condition. And I'm curious with that, Alan, what would you say have been the greatest advances in the last 24 years since Michael's death? And what are you sure hoping we do better in 2022 than we even have still?
Yeah, well, I was telling another family recently about how I've learned from you over the years. Again, Eliana's life changed very negatively. She never slept over any friends' houses after we got home, after we got the diagnosis. There was a fear of alarm clocks and noises from the kitchen, and all athletics were stopped. And over the years, I've I've watched your opinion change on athletics and kids that are maximally or properly dosed on beta blockers. And Eliana's never had an event. And she's now 31 years old and happy and healthy. And she actually got very involved in the teen and children's groups at
Hmm.
some of the SADS meetings and told her story to some of the kids. So I think the knowledge of what they can and can't do. Certainly, the medications have improved, and the genetic coding and understanding of the variants and the different long QT and other defects. And what still needs to be done, it's so ironic. Just a couple of hours ago, I spoke with my kid's mom. We subsequently got divorced, unfortunately, after Michael passed away. She's has an implanted defibrillator and has had an event as a 38-year-old woman. She passed out face first on an airplane, fainted, and that's when she got the defibrillator. She had a minor surgical procedure this week in Los Angeles where the anesthesiologist, before administering anesthesia, uh, said, "Here's what we're going to give you." And she said, "I've got long QT. Here's the list of medications you can't use." And he said, "Well, that's fine. I'll be in the room. Don't worry about the medications." She said, "No, I can get a fatal arrhythmia. My son has died." He said, "That's okay. I'll be in the room. We deal with arrhythmias all the time." She said, "I'm not going to have the surgery until I talk to somebody that understands and believes me about this list of medications."
Hmm.
So it's 2021, Mike. This is a university affiliated hospital in Southern California. Anesthesiologist has no knowledge of long QT and the risk of taking
Mhm.
dozens, if not hundreds, of medications.
Yeah.
That medical knowledge, that medical education of our medical community has to continue. That's why I donate every year. I think that's one of the most effective things SADS does is educate, continue to educate the medical community.
Well, thanks so much. And Dr. London, you are a gem. We've known each other for a long time. I appreciate you, and I wish you a happy new year. I'm going to invite two others to come on for their story. And if there's time, I hope I can bring you back to say thank you again. But if not, um, we'll see you in the new year someplace, somewhere. And just very grateful for you. And we think of Michael even now, 24 years later, and celebrate his first 11 years and just know that we're doing everything we can, that these kind of stories just should not have to be real stories any longer as we go forward into the new year. So thank you, blessings to you, and happy new year. And I hope to see you in maybe 15 minutes, but we shall see. And so Aaron's going to get ready to bring two very special people to the SADS Foundation. Like Dr. London's family and Michael's death, their story begins in tragedy with Brittany. And Brittany was 8 years old, just about to turn 9, 2 days later, when on the day after Valentine's Day in 2005, 16 years ago, Brittany dies suddenly. And that changes the world forever and the lives forever for Brittany's dad, Tony, Valine, the whole family, the whole neighborhood. As we'll hear, we'll have the next door neighbor, Mr. Jim Guthrie, join us as well, because Brittany was not just very special to her immediate family. She was sort of the big sister at age 8 of the neighborhood. And so to hear out of that awful story, something beautiful that has happened over the last many years in Brittany's trees, and their journey in conceiving of that and participating in that and raising a lot of awareness and a lot of money for the cause of the SADS Foundation. So for the originators of Brittany's Trees. I'll have Aaron have Mr. Tony Valine, Brittany's dad, join us, and the next door neighbor, Jim Guthrie. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining me, and I wish you both a Merry Christmas. And I gave our community a little bit of the background, but maybe Tony, if you would, take us back to that awful time. And I guess before we lose Brittany, were there any forewarnings looking back, or was that day the first day that her genetic heart condition declared itself?
No, we did have some forewarnings. Our journey actually started in 2003 when my son Anthony passed out in gym class. And it was a lot, sometimes people do pass out. But what was alarming to me was that when he came home, he had a big knot on his forehead. And he said he passed out in gym, but Dad, it didn't even hurt. So in other words, if you pass out, that should hurt. So it was alarming to me. So I did take him to the doctor, and they did diagnose him with long QT syndrome. And at the time, I had no idea what that meant. It was new to me and new to my family. We had no idea. So then fast forward a year later, now Anthony's been on medication. He went on beta blockers. So he was being medicated. So when this happened, they said this is a genetic condition and we all need to be tested. So we did. So Brittany was the first one to get tested, and they came back, she doesn't have it. And then I got tested, and I found out at 36 years old, I had long QT syndrome. I had no idea prior to this. So then about a year later, Brittany passed out at a soccer game. She was playing soccer. So then I thought, wait a minute, I got to take her back in. So we took her in, and the doctor said, oh, wait a minute, she has borderline long QT syndrome. Again, don't understand what borderline means. I thought either you have it or you don't. But anyways, that's what we were told. And then she went on some beta blockers. So this would be 2004. So now in 2005 is when she passed away in February. She was going to school. She was on the choir at school. And she walked in the building with some friends. This was an hour before the rest of the school got there because she was in choir and they got there early. And she collapsed in the lobby and they could not revive her. They took her, to the hospital. And we have some pretty good local stations that got there pretty quick. And, I was at work, got a phone call, said, you need to go to the hospital. Your daughter's at the hospital. And I said, is she okay? And they said, just go to the hospital. So I knew at that time I had such a sinking feeling and, obviously prayed all the way to the hospital and nothing bad happened. But I had a really, really bad feeling just based on the phone call that I had received from the principal at the school. So, yes, when I got there, she had passed on. Devastating moments, obviously.
Yeah.
And, I can still remember it like it was yesterday. But, she's such a bright star. And that's what kept everybody going. And then after, she passed on, we had, the wake and the funeral. Then you don't know what to do. Now what do you do? Because that's a busy time and you're busy, and you don't realize sometimes really what's happening.
Right.
Everything is just going 1,000 miles an hour.
Right. And so Tony, I wonder back then if you could tell me, we know commercial genetic testing for long QT syndrome really didn't commence in the United States until 2003. And so when that was all happening and you and Brittany was getting checked, were you at that time being told who had it and who didn't have it based upon somebody staring at the ECG, the EKG? Or had they done genetic testing and said, your son's cause of long QT syndrome is LQT1, like Dr. London told us was Michael's genetic type?
No, we never did get genetic testing. So this was all just from an EKG showing. To this day, we still don't know which one we have. Since then, my son and myself have implanted defibrillators.
Mhm.
So, you know, we feel a little safer about that, and we're still both medicated. We both take beta blockers. But yeah, so getting back to Brittany. So, you know, after all that happened, we're lost. I mean, so
So what happens? At what point out of devastation does the idea of something beautiful called Brittany's trees come to being?
okay, so this was it probably, let's see, it probably happened about a month or two after. I had a neighbor,
Wow.
Jim Guthrie, right there on the screen. He came and knocked on my door and he said, you know, I have an idea. What do you think? And then he gave me his idea and I thought it was fantastic.
Hmm.
And so,
So maybe I could bring Jim in and say, Jim,
yeah,
okay, so if this, what made you do that? I mean, that's a beautiful thing to think a neighbor literally a
Yeah.
month from their daughter's death, and even your own family, as I learned that Brittany was something awfully special to the Guthrie family and the Guthrie girls, your three very young daughters. But
Yeah.
that's quite something to come forward. How did you even think uh, of it and the timing of it? And now here we are basically celebrating the 16th year, if my numbers are right, of Brittany trees.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, Dr. Ackerman, Brittany was just one of the more special girls I've ever met. And as a young dad, I'm looking at her. This is the first time she's doing this. She calls me Mr. Guthrie. She's very polite. She's riding her bike at this age, and she was just one of the very special individual. She had an aura about her. She was very mature for her age, and so we all know what happened unfortunately, on February 15th in 2005. And my idea was we live 3 homes away from a park where Brittany used to go down the slide and swing on the swings. And I went to the Carroll Stream Park District to get the park renamed in her honor. It's called Friendship Park. I wanted it to be the Brittany Valine Memorial Park. And it's just one of the lasting memories. And they came back to us and said, well, we're not going to change the park because normally that's reserved when you name something for somebody that has accomplished something. Well, we'll let you name a bench in her honor or plant like an oak tree. And I kind of I didn't act on it, and I don't know if it was the right thing to do or not to take advantage of that offer from the community. And so here came the summertime, here came the fall, and I'm like, oh boy, this is going to be one of the worst Christmases, unfortunately, for Tony and his family. And this is where I came up with this idea. We're all working hard and we all come home late. And it's just one of those things that, what can we do to brighten up his situation, and how do you brighten up the whole neighborhood? And so the idea was to set up a 6-foot Scotch pine tree in every neighbor's front yard, decorate it with white lights, and donate the money to the SADS Foundation.
Wow.
And I think first year we did it, we donated like $248.
yeah, we did.
And it was, and then I got a thank you letter. I'm like, no, it's not from me. I didn't give you the 248. It's the community, and this is what we all did. And they're like, really? And then neighbors were coming down our street saying, hey, you guys are really doing a good job celebrating Christmas. And I'm like, well, yeah, we're celebrating Christmas, but we're also honoring the beautiful memory of Brittany Valine. And they're like, well, can we participate next year? I'm like, sure. And they were in this different street. And we're like, yeah. So we went to 22 trees, then we went to 65, then we doubled pretty much every year. And, one of the things that makes this happen is the neighbors always will get together and plan it. It's like, we don't know how it happens every year because there's over 250 volunteers in different towns.
Wow.
And at any point, they could pull out if it's snowing, if it's raining, and we somehow have to set up 1,850 trees. But everybody comes together, we get it done. And, Brittany, her spirit lives on through this very special, wonderful event.
So, Tony, I'm sure with you all now doing that for the last 16 years, there's got to be some funny stories, incredible stories. Like you won't believe what happened at this event. share some of those, you know, unforgettable moments that have come with doing this now for 15 plus years.
Tony, don't be shy about the backyard one.
Yeah, we got a couple stories, and I'm gonna start out at the very beginning. It was, Jim came to me. Neither of us had any kind of a vehicle to go get these 22 trees, so we have a neighbor down the street who does have a pickup truck, and we don't know him. We never had met him, so we went and knocked on his door and said, "Hey, we noticed you have a pickup truck. Here's what we're gonna do. Do you think you can help us go get some trees from Home Depot to do this?" He said, "Yeah, let me go get my keys." And we're like, "Okay, hold it. We're not going right now, but this is the kind of people that help us." He was ready to go on the spot. And we had never met this individual before. His name is Dan. And of course, now we're really, really close friends for obvious reasons. And he's one of our strong contributors, like the rest of the group here. So that was one of the stories. And then, we have another one, a little more funny. So we were putting up some trees in another town called Bloomingdale, and it was me, Jim, and our other neighbor, Tom. And the guy wanted 2 trees, one in the front yard, one in the back. So perfect. So we did the front tree. We went to go do the one in the back, and we didn't know it, but he had an in-ground pool. So we were walking, you got to carry the tree back there, the post, the pounder. So the lights, you got to carry some things. So Jim, my friend here, was carrying the post pounder, which are fairly heavy. They have some weight to them. And we were walking too slow for him. So he's going to go ahead of us. Well, guess what? He slips into the pool, and luckily it was covered, so he didn't get wet, but it's a rubber cover. He slipped all the way into the middle of the pool. So we had to kind of like pull Jim out of there, and he hit himself in the head with the pounder. He was a little bit dazed. So he came out, and he was a little dazed and confused, but we got it done. But I'm not saying that was funny, but it kind of was funny.
Yeah. Jim,
you pushed me in. Come on, Tony. You pushed me in.
No.
Here's your chance to come clean. Who pushed who, right?
Right.
Exactly.
How about, Jim, as you think about all of those, and remind me, what's the most trees that you've done ever in one of the years of the celebration?
One of the years we did, a few years ago, we did 2,250. And
Wow.
what we realized is that we need a lot of help to do it. We could sell probably 5,000. We could sell 10,000 trees, but we have to cap it at a certain point. And what we need is volunteers and help from other towns to do it, because at the end of the day, we're just, 5 families here on Matthew Lane and Carroll Stream, and we need other satellite captains and different towns to lead that effort and setting it up. But yeah, we did get up to 2,250, and we're kind of trending to that level again with other towns coming on board. So,
and when you set these up, do you guys typically have the trees are up from here to here date? Do they stay up into the new year? Do they stay lit? What's kind of the event? And I do hope, since that I don't know how long they stay up, I hope someday I get to come to your community for one of the lightings of the Brittany's trees. That would be really
that'd be great.
Honor for me.
We would love that. Yeah, we would love.
Yeah,
that.
we'd love to have you. We set up the trees the Saturday after Thanksgiving. Okay. So every year, everybody knows we set it up that weekend. We start selling September 15th, and we're typically sold out by Halloween. So we set up the trees Thanksgiving weekend. And then the first weekend in January is when we start seeing families start taking out the trees. But there's families out there that actually keep it up. It's their family tradition that they keep up that tree the week before Easter. So they get a kick out of it because they're like, okay, there's a squirrel family under this tree, and, whatever it may be. But, a lot of people, they know what the tree represents. It's a very good, positive thing. And so they try to hold on to that tree as long as they can.
Tony, if you could, as you think about what has happened in terms of what you have seen the SADS Foundation do with your gift and your annual gift, what is something that you're perhaps most pleased with us? And what is something that you say, we still have a lot of work to do in this area, and I sure hope the SADS Foundation makes some advances in 2022?
Yeah, we're very happy donating to the SADS Foundation. We did some research before we picked our donation foundation, and we feel strong about the SADS Foundation and what they're doing. Um, and although we donate a nice amount of money, but for us, we love that they support the families that have this condition, because there's no cure. So if there's no cure for something, you have to treat it, and treatment starts with the families. They have to understand what this condition is, what it means, and how we can be treated. So I love that the SADS Foundation does that. And for us as a team here in Carroll Stream, the biggest thing for us, our core team, is that we are sending a message what long QT syndrome is, where otherwise people may have never even known about this condition. So for us, it's more about the awareness than it is the donation. But we love donating to this cause, the SADS Foundation, because they're doing great work in helping other families, and that's what we want. I mean, I would prefer, would never want anybody to have to go through what I did, and I know they do. But our goal is to have this stop, and families be able to live with this condition, because there is no cure, and thrive with it. And I know they do a very good job pushing that message and doing it.
Yeah. And Jim, long QT syndrome isn't in your family or in your daughters, thank goodness, but you as the observer to what it really did back then and still does, what do you want to see us achieve in 2022?
I think you guys are doing an excellent job with awareness, and we're trying to, in a unique way, almost mimicking what your philosophy is, because we could sell these trees for $150 and $200, and we could actually be writing you a bigger check, but that check would only come from maybe 200 or 300 families. So what we're doing is that we're mimicking what you're doing. It's awareness. And so that's where 1,850 families know about Brittany's story or the SADS Foundation or what long QT syndrome is. And so that's what, Tony and I and all the neighbors that are part of this valiant effort, that's what we talk about when we get together to plan every year for Brittany's Trees. And we couldn't be more proud to be associated to the SADS Foundation.
Well, on behalf of the SADS Foundation, I'm just so grateful for the two of you and for what you've done. Obviously, I wish you never had to do any of this, and it could have been done for a different reason, a correct diagnosis, a correct treatment, a good treatment, and the tragedy of February 15th averted and thwarted, and we hear of somebody who's now 24 years old living and thriving, just like we could hopefully have learned of Michael now being 35, Michael London. And so we will continue to try. We are working so hard. I'm so proud of the SADS Foundation, the team that's there, Alice as our leader and CEO, Jan in development, Marcia in the education to increase the awareness among physicians and healthcare providers, Anna and Aaron with what they're doing with social media outreach and getting the word out. And so we're not only getting the word out, but we are having a life-saving effect and a life-transforming effect. And so for all of those who hear my voice and are already partners and givers to the SADS Foundation, we are so thankful and grateful. And for those yet to choose, maybe today, choose to join us. We have a life-saving mission and a life-giving one. And so we thank you. I hope Brittany's Trees will continue and her light will still shine. Mm-hmm. And for those with the condition, Tony and your son, that the two of you thrive living large despite having your long QT syndrome. And so I wish you a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to all of you out there. This brings 2021 to a close and our 80th session to a close together. Join me January 7th, 2022 for our first one of the new year, episode number 81, where I'll be taking your questions. We will continue with questions, and hopefully, I know the questions are great. Hopefully the answers are just as good with Dr. Mike. And so, Martha, I saw your question on the sidebar, and we will take it up again as the first question of 2022. But while we wait for that, do not give up for your 18-year-old daughter. I have competitive swimmers with long QT syndrome. I have competitive swimmers who have eyes on Summer Olympics 2024 with their long QT syndrome. So tell her and tell yourself, do not give up. And we will build on that question as the first question of 2022. So with that, all the best. I love you. You are a very special part of my life. You've been a blessing to me. You're a blessing to the SADS Foundation. And if you do celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas. If yours is the holidays for you, enjoy the holidays. To all, Happy New Year. And I'll see you next year.